All right, we're back here at Has-Beens Cafe with Jack Nounnan, local peace and social justice activist. You mentioned coming to Humboldt County and really wanting to relearn that sense of community, learn what the native cultures that were the original inhabitants here had to say. What would you say you've done to adapt, being in Humboldt County for what, over a decade now?
Oh my goodness. It's hard to adapt considering I'm just a white man. I'm on somebody else's territory to begin with, and that's always offensive to me. I always, it's so interesting to deal with Indian populations, Indian people, because they're just so natural. They come from their background, their environment, and it's always a teaching to me because they don't want me to be anything but myself either. So I remember being in one ceremony where I was asked to do the ceremony of the four directions, and so I got through the ceremony and I was talking with them, and they have such a great sense of humor. I think, well, I got a pretty good sense of humor too, but let's keep on that level where I said, halfway through the ceremony, I really wanted to, I just wanted to laugh about something because it was so funny, and they said, why didn't you? It was so, of course, they're always right there, and that's the kind of cutting sense of your presence that it's always good to be, in presence with Native people. And they're always part of our demonstrations if we can get somebody. We're always calling them right now in this outreach to find out how many people know about naval testing, which will essentially take, which means you can kill or harm 11.7 million mammals. That's not even including other ocean life, my God. And so one of the parts of this has been reaching out to find out how many tribal councils, how many tribes across the country, but particularly along the coast where this is most going to take place. Even though they're going to be bombing and taking runs over Idaho, it's going on all the time. Anyway, reaching out to them, it's really wonderful, and it changes how I dream, what I see, how I be.
And of course, we first met in the late 1990s, organizing the local Humboldt County Stop the WTO coalition that led to a lot of Humboldt activists playing a key role in the successful protests against the World Trade Organization ministerial meeting in Seattle in 1999. I know that was a very formative experience for me, 22 years old. What was that experience like for you and for the other folks you work with here in Humboldt?
Well, again, it was first of all very personal. I take things personally in order to keep things pretty cued in. Even if I start going too much on memory, then I get lost. Everyone would get lost. But so feeling things, the collective conscience, which comes in like a will, like what's this bothering me today? And one of the things that happened around August of that year, that was 1999, it was just this sense that something was going on. It was like, what is this? And then the report of that nations were getting together at our port out here to talk about bringing more traffic in. So I was with her first, and we did an action out there where we actually met them at the Adorni Center and posted signs and had a little fleet out in the bay with stuff and poked into their business about, we didn't want all their WTO business in our harbor. I know that may go against the grain with some people, but that's what we felt. And it was nonviolent. We got in trouble. We were arrested, thrown in jail, the whole 9 yards.
I remember I was at that meeting, and yeah, it was a big plot to establish a foreign trade free zone in Eureka, something that never really amounted to much in the end.
Right, that was so interesting. I mean, I can get off on side stories immediately because there's so much that happens. That was my first jail time here, running into Earth Firsters who were doing their action inside. I was saying, I came from a background of being submissive and being prepared to take the punishment, good Gandhian, and here my friends inside jail were taking up, like they were actually arguing, not arguing, but saying what they meant with every guard. They were taking on the kind of food they were getting. They were reaching out to people in jail and expressing what we felt. We were actually in a work camp right there in jail. And it just totally changed how I went to jail after that. But in regard to the WTO, that was huge, because then we heard that it was going to happen, and something was going to happen in Seattle. Nobody had a sense of really what that meant at all. Really a good background to this is that up at HSU, we decided that was a good place to begin. So we went up there and we had some meetings up there from week to week after it got started, but they started to gain a momentum. We had sometimes 60, 70, maybe more in a big classroom, and talking about how we would do it. And out of that, we would get into nonviolent trainings in workshops out in the community someplace, or maybe up there too. It was all, we really were harnessing some energy there. And in the meantime, because the HSU administration had no idea what all this meant any more than we did, we got together 2 to 3 buses put out by the administration, and all that they asked was everybody who got on the bus to be, transported up there would sign chits saying that they would not be in any way activist or whatever. We will not be political. Of course, when they got up there, and all those a lot of those kids were in jail, and their clothes were taken away from them, and it was cold and no blankets, and treated like just, third world country people. And out of that came a whole new stock of activists who understood what this country is doing behind bars, what it's doing every place. That was huge gather. We were so glad they got in jail, because we knew they'd come out better. So it was no big deal.
And I remember the huge crowds as the WTO went on that would form right outside the jail there in Seattle.
Yeah, it was huge. We came, and actually, when we finally got there, it was finding out there were more trainings to go into, more focal point on how we were going to take on the WTO, and we ended up treating it as one big pie. We did a lot of really good strategy meetings, surveillance of the whole place, and realized that we could really cover every entrance to the convention center, which was a mile and a half around. We could cover every entrance and some, and that's what we did. So each of the different organizations took on a different entrance and did some. They didn't say what they were going to do. Ours was on Union Street, and 6th and Union, I think it was, and we did a lockdown right there and stopped everybody from going in, but it was being done all the way around. And out of those meetings, we learned much about ourselves and what we could do with, in a nonviolent way, even though there were the folks, the black folks, not black folks, but the black bloc from Eugene was there, and we got along fine. We said, okay, if you're going to do actions too, and they were going to, do some other stuff like break a window or something, we said, not part of our thing. Nope, that's going to give us a bad rep. We really want this to be seen, and we had an understanding. They were going to do it in different hours, different places, and we were going to do our action. And that worked out really well, except for the newspapers, which of course, it was all one big thing. They did their thing, and we all were a part of this offense to the city.
And of course, it came out later, the so-called Black Bloc was through and through chock full of police agents who were posing as demonstrators to provoke a violent response.
That too, we had a lot of people on there. We really had a lot of fun with all of that. We had a lot of fun in spite of the fact that we were attacked and shot at. It was almost in those canyons in Seattle. It was almost like being in a war zone to listen to what was going off. When they exploded some of the stuff they were after, that they used in order to push us back, it was extraordinary. Or to get stung with one of their pellets. It was nothing. not in relation to what people really have to go through. But it showed a bunch of us what was going on, and we were working really in close communion with a lot of union people. We were in marches with 70,000 people at one time. And in the mornings we would get up, it was amazing. We slept on doorways in crowded houses, you know, like wall to wall people. People opened their houses, people opened their you know, garages underneath. One building had a big place we could stay for a while, and then the police found that. And we had to kind of scurry and find another place, maybe at a church, maybe not. But in the morning we got up. We got up and we knew what we were going to do, and that was so interesting because we all, I'm only talking as of one, but I know what happened. All of us began to march towards the center of Seattle. We didn't know what was going to happen. That was after that first day of lockdown, in which all of us did our job, as well as everybody else who was not in action, holding hands all the way across 1.5 miles. Nobody much got through. That was the thing that was so amazing. And so then we went home after 6-7 hours, and hardly anybody had gotten into the conference. We didn't know what was going on in there. We just knew that we had done the best we could. And the cops didn't know what to do with us. They knew what to do with us the next time around in the next one in Washington, but at the IMF World Bank. But at that first time, Seattle cops said, "We can handle it." Well, they didn't know what to do with us, and we won that battle. But first, to know that we really had this thing going, where we got up every morning and we went towards the middle of the city, and we would be walking along, you know, separately down the sidewalks, and then suddenly there'd be 2 or 3 people with marching. We all knew what we were marching for. It was not a march yet. And then we would get to an intersection, and we'd start going up that way towards Seattle, because that was the best way to get there. And then we'd find 40 more people coming the same direction. And finally, as we got closer, we had 1,000, and then we had 2,000, and then we had 3,000. And by that time, we took to the streets. We didn't care about anything else. Took to the streets, streetcars, buses, cops, everybody. We just walked right through them if they would not get out of the way. The cops finally jumped in front of us and attempted to lead us where they wanted us to be. But the minute we saw where they were taking us, we just turned off and went that way. We had great sense of intuition and telepathy at that moment within that particular situation. And there were a number of us up front, you know, trying to help, you know, seeing that things were okay. But people really had a good sense of themselves, and really enough people by that time had been trained in nonviolence, so that we knew that if some weird thing happened, somebody felt like taking it upon themselves to be aggressive, we would just gather around them, and, you know, and coax them out. Come on, this is not why we came here. This is not what we're doing here. We know why we're here, because they're violent. Now we've got to do something as an antithesis to this poison. Let's take care of them. We can talk them out. In fact, that's even how we took care of the cops. When the cops finally got on our act and stuff, and came down with their weapons, if they went into the crowd to get one particular person, we had been trained to get around the cop. And then finally, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to beat my way out of this pack of people who were just hanging loose, and, you know, not disturbed by the whole situation, not squawking, not yelling, not doing anything. But the way it was shown in the paper is it was just, except for a few very fine photos of cops just coming down on us with their weapons and their uniforms and their mask and their, you know, and their kind of stuff that they sheltered themselves with. It was really just, you know, us being very nonviolent and not raging, and if we had to move, we moved without yelling at one another and, "Hey, let's get on there!" It wasn't like that. This is TV stuff. This is not what we do in nonviolent actions.
Well, we'll talk more about the media's role in perpetuating the police state and such in our next part of the Sentinel interview with local peace and social justice activist Jack Nounnan here at Has Beans Cafe.